we need to talk about a traveler's absolute worst nightmare. Imagine being stopped right at the gate, even though you have a valid ticket and a valid visa. This is happening to literally thousands of people flying out of Pakistan. We're going to break down exactly why it's happening, and more importantly, what you can do to protect yourself. Okay, just picture this. You've planned everything. You've packed your bags. You have your ticket, and you've got that visa you worked so hard to get. All your documents are perfectly in order. You get through security, you clear immigration, and right as you're about to step onto the plane, someone steps in front of you and says, "Sorry, you're not flying today." And listen, this isn't some crazy what-if scenario. This is the reality for a whole lot of people right now. And just to be clear, we're not talking about a handful of unlucky people here and there. No. We're talking about over 12,000 passengers who were recently offloaded from flights leaving Pakistan. Get this, more than 8,000 of them were just from Karachi's airport alone. The scale of this problem is staggering, and honestly, it's only getting bigger. So you hear this word offloading. What does it actually mean? Well, it's pretty simple and pretty scary. It's when an airline or an immigration official decides you can't board your flight, even when you have all the right paperwork. But here's the real kicker, the part that can mess up your travel plans for years to come. They often put a stamp in your passport. And that one little stamp, it's like a permanent red flag, a black mark that follows you everywhere you apply for a visa in the future. Yeah, this whole thing has gone way beyond a few isolated incidents. We're looking at a full-blown crisis for anyone trying to travel internationally from Pakistan. So let's dig in. Who exactly is getting targeted, and why is all of this happening right now? So who are these people getting stopped? Your first thought might be, oh, they must have had fake papers or an expired visa, right? But nope. That's what's so wild about this. The huge majority of these 12,000 plus travelers, these are folks who did everything by the book. They had proper tickets, valid visas, all the required documents. They followed every single rule and still got turned away at the very last second. So, why the sudden crackdown? Where's all this pressure coming from? Well, a lot of it is actually coming from outside the country. You've got countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia that have complained to the Pakistani government. They're saying, hey, we're having problems with some of your citizens, people overstaying their visas, getting into trouble. So their message has been pretty clear. You guys need to filter these people on your end. Stop them before they even get on the plane. And that has put this incredible pressure on local immigration officials, basically turning them into gatekeepers who are now hyper-vigilant and, maybe even too cautious. But that outside pressure, that's really just one piece of the puzzle. To truly get what's going on, you have to look at all the different reasons someone might get offloaded. There are about 7 main causes, but there's one in particular that has become the real engine behind this crisis in Pakistan. All right, so let's run through them. You've got your standard reasons that could happen anywhere in the world, right? Issues with your documents, the airline overbooked the flight, a passenger's being unruly, or maybe someone's on a no-fly list, like the ECL. All pretty straightforward stuff. But that 7th reason? Profiling. That's where this whole story takes a very sharp and very concerning turn. And that is the factor that's really driving this crisis. And you can really see the difference in scale here. I mean, sure, the standard issues and bad behavior, they account for some cases, but what we're seeing in Pakistan is this massive, massive spike in systemic profiling. It's a situation where travelers are being judged not on their actual documents, but on pure assumptions about who they are and where they come from. Now, profiling itself is not some new invention. It's used by security all over the world. But man, it is a blunt instrument, and it can go spectacularly wrong. Just look at the Philippines. In 2022, they offloaded over 32,000 people because they suspected human trafficking. But when they actually investigated, turns out only 427 of those were real cases, less than 2%. The rest were innocent people, and that's exactly the kind of thing happening in Pakistan today. Profiling based on what city you're from, how you're dressed, or what an official thinks your economic situation is. So this is really what it all boils down to. The huge difference between a legitimate security check and just plain unfair profiling. A legitimate check is about facts. Does your passport have at least 6 months left on it? Is your visa correct? Simple. But unfair profiling is based entirely on assumptions. It's an official thinking, well, people from your city tend to overstay, so I'm stopping you. One is about enforcing the law, the other is just prejudice in action. Okay, so that's the problem and that's the cause. And I know, it sounds pretty daunting, but, and this is really important, you are not powerless in this situation.
So let's switch gears. We're going to walk through a 10-point plan based on decades of travel experience to help you navigate this whole mess and protect your trip. All right, let's start with your documents and your story. First point, be ridiculously prepared. I mean, over-prepared. Keep everything in one dedicated file. Your ticket, hotel booking, bank statement, ID cards, even your old passports. Everything. Number 2, know your story cold. When they ask where you're going and why, your answer needs to be instant, confident, and clear. No hesitation. 3 is all about perception. You have to dress to blend in. A full suit and tie on a 24-hour flight just looks weird. At the same time, avoid anything that fits a negative stereotype. Just look normal. 4, and this is so crucial, stay calm. Nerves look like guilt to these guys. And finally, number 5, constantly reinforce your ties to home. Talk about your family, your job, your business, anything that proves you have every reason to come back.
And now for what is probably the single most important piece of advice in this entire video. If an official asks you why you're traveling, there is one answer that is an instant, automatic, undeniable red flag. It's the fastest way to get your ticket canceled and your passport stamped.
So rule number 6 is that golden rule. Do not mention job hunting. Got it? Good. Moving on to number 7, a simple but smart tip. Fly from the airport closest to your home. Traveling all the way across the country to catch a flight can look suspicious, like an agent told you to do it to avoid scrutiny. Number 8, if you have a brand new passport with no stamps, bring copies of your old ones. Prove you have a history of traveling and, more importantly, a history of returning. Number 9 is a communication tip. It is much better to speak clearly in Urdu than to create a misunderstanding with broken English. And finally, number 10, which might be the most important of all, be unfailingly polite. Do not argue, do not raise your voice, address officials respectfully as sir. This is not the time or place to pick a fight.
Let's just circle back to that point about how you dress for a second, because it really is more important than you might think. The goal here is simple. Don't stand out. A full 3-piece suit on a long-haul flight is just as strange as wearing something that plays into a negative stereotype. You want to aim for smart casual, comfortable, neat, and neutral. The less attention you draw to yourself, the better. And one final thought to leave you with. In this day and age, all of your data is connected. Officials already have a profile on you. They can see if you paid an urgent fee for your passport, if you have a digital bank account, all of it. They likely know a lot more about you than you think, and they're using that data to build a picture of who you are before you even set foot in the airport. Look, following all these steps will absolutely 100% increase your chances of having a smooth trip. But let's be crystal clear about what this is. This is about navigating a flawed, broken system. And that raises a much deeper, more troubling question. When you've done everything right, when you've followed every single rule, should you still have to worry about being judged unfairly? In a truly just system, would you even need a 10-point survival guide like this one? That's the real issue at the heart of this entire crisis.